It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
By the time you're 40, Bo hears this all the time because you're not in your 40s.
Not just
I'm
yet.
unfortunately well into my 40s. We're over the halfway point at this side. You do have the potential to be a world changer. I like to think what we're doing here with the Money Guy Show, doing all this, I really am having an impact of helping people understand how money works and being effective. But you've also, here's where it's in conflict a little bit. You're past the gladiator stage. Right. You're not a warrior anymore. And the fact that, I remember when I was a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, I think I thought I wanted to conquer the world at all costs. And then when you get in your 40s, you get all sentimental. Yep. You're like, I still want to make a difference, but it's for a different reason now. I actually want to do something positive, and it's not just to take scalps. Now it's, can we help and mend and make people realize the value of what they're doing? And I think that's a powerful thing, because this is the age. I will tell you, when you reach your 40s, I think if you've done it right, you avoid the midlife crisis, and you probably actually recognize the value of generosity because you're so grateful for all that hard work that happened at 20s and 30s and the good things that happen. It is a turning point. You just hope that you came out on the positive side of those early decisions that need to happen. So let's talk about the planning opportunities for 40-year-olds.
I love the first thing that you wrote down, Brian, and I use that language very purposely because that's what you wrote down. Make sure that your plan is actually recorded. Otherwise, it's still a dream.
It's true.
In your 20s, it's okay to be a dreamer. It's okay to have these big visions of where you want to go. In your 30s, even, you can still do that. But by the time you get into your 40s, you really need to kind of have your plan pinned. It needs to be down on paper so that you actually have something to keep you accountable.
And I didn't use the word, and when I was doing show notes, I didn't use the word retire on purpose. I don't like that word retire because I'm one of those people, I love what I do for a living. I want to be financially independent. And I think even when you hear people talk about the FIRE movement where they're trying to retire early, I don't even know if they all want to truly retire and sit in a hammock every day. Right. I think a lot of them just want to have the flexibility, to basically go live life like they want to go work in a different avenue or something else and use their resources elsewhere. But it is one of those things where by the time you reach your 40s, you need to know the when, the where, the why, and the how, because that plan's not taking shape unless you're actually putting numbers and dreams to pad and paper or spreadsheets so you can actually start making some measurements on it. So I also ask you, the planning opportunity is, are there some specific things you need to be setting up with your family? I put some fun stuff, but I'll tell you, once again, me focusing on myself and the fact that just because life breeds wisdom and experience, I didn't count on that in my mid-30s we'd have a special needs child. Of course. That having a special needs child that you just don't know if they'll ever be able to live on their own, take care of themselves, creates a financial obligation that I don't think a lot of people have to think about. But there are people out here. So you might have we all have our struggles and things. So I tell you, look at your financial situation and make sure those things are built into your plan. That's right. I mean, are you putting things, because that's a real world life example, but it also could be something fun. Yep. Like you've got the desire that you want to take the whole family, your kids, when they reach 25, you want to take everybody to Australia. Yeah. Why not go ahead and start planning for that now in your 40s?
Maybe when your kids graduate college, you want to take each one of your kids on a special trip somewhere to commemorate that big life achievement. You got to kind of start planning for those things because they're kind of big.
Education. Yep. I think a lot of us understand education is that gateway, that bridge to success. So you need to start building that education plan for your clients as well. And this is also... This is one that's going to bring a lot of... It's the cold water spot check. And the fact that in your 40s, when you actually make sure this plan, you double check this plan, you can know whether or not you need to push the accelerator further down on your savings because you're like, oh crud, I'm a little behind, we better save more. Or I will tell you, if you've listened to what we talked about in your 20s and your 30s and the activities you should do, you could have the exact opposite effect. Maybe this is where you get the opportunity to take your foot off the accelerator a touch and live like you told your spouse you wanted to. I will full on confess, I probably would have to give up my tightwad card in my 40s. Don't you? You've known me for over a decade, Bo. I've always been very tight and good with my money, but in my 40s, not as much so.
I think we had this conversation, and we actually did this for some of our clients, kind of thinking through their situation. Said, okay, if they're 40 years old, and we take just what they've saved thus far, right, just what they have in their current portfolio, and we multiply it times a wealth multiplier, the thing that we talked about what your money could turn into, realistically, those clients or those individuals we're talking about, they wouldn't even necessarily have to save any more money because they did the hard work in their 20s, in their 30s, and so now they could pull their foot off the pedal. Now, most people have other goals. They want to fund and stuff, but it's so incredible to be in that situation to be able to do that. Not everyone's in that situation, and we've had this conversation before too, where a lot of times in the 40s, you still have a good 20, 25 working years left before you hit that magical 65 age. If you need to put your foot on the accelerator,
this is the time.
This is the time because you actually
sure.
still can do it.
And this is, and that's a great segue into the financial roadblocks. What are the things you need to be thinking about? The first thing I had put down was just don't let life happen. I'm always amazed at how many people are not taking an active role in this, and I always get this visual of you're creating your own film. You're writing your own transcript of your life. You get to determine if this thing is going to be a horror flick, a slasher film, a drama, or it's going to be some love story, or it's going to be, you got to use your love story, or some inspirational,
that was his Barry White voice,
or your inspirational adventure. These things, I'm telling you, be an active player in the role you are creating for your life. You don't just let life happen. The other thing, we did a whole show on this too, Bo. I love when we've been doing this long enough that we have shows you can go look up in the archives and watch the specifics. Keeping up with the Joneses.
Oh, this happens. I mean, this is a real problem that we see. Brian, I've heard you say this time and time again. Stop swimming upstream if there's no reason for you to swim upstream. Just for the sake of swimming upstream.
I will, and this is a cautionary tale for a lot of you guys out there. You're watching a financial show. You are successful. You will have to make a decision: is how much is enough? On like house size, type of cars, and those type of things. Because here's a truth of life type thing: as the poorest guy on the nicest street in America is not the happiest guy on that street.
That's right.
That is a fact. So you do not want to be the poorest person in your neighborhood. So pay attention to those things. Maybe you don't need to go buy the bigger house.
That's right.
I mean, watch that lifestyle creep. Watch what, we all have some form. Pride is not a healthy thing, but we all, unfortunately, it's part of the human condition, that behavior is you worry what other people think of you.
And Brian, I think this is another this is a financial roadblock, but maybe it's just even a life roadblock. And we both have friends that have fallen in this category. In their 40s, you start thinking about all the things that you didn't accomplish, or all the things that didn't happen.
When that part of that sentimental thing that I was telling you about.
One of the things that we think you should do in your 40s is remember to focus on the good things. Don't just think about I wish I would have, or this didn't happen, or I never achieved that. That can just put you into that dreaded midlife crisis. I mean, that's a real thing that happens, and those sorts of thoughts can lead to unnecessary spending, irrevocable career decisions, divorces, all kinds of things. Remember to take inventory of all the good things, of the things in life that are worth noting, that are happy. I know that's like soft and touchy, but I think it's important.
Well, I think the wounded warrior like myself, in my 40s, I can share with you that some of the best advice I ever had was be sure that you shepherd and kind of watch that inner voice of yours. It is more powerful. It can be the power that gives you exponential rocket fuel to be successful, but it also can play some crazy games with you, especially in your 40s, that you do some horrible things in your long-term life. So pay attention to that inner voice. Always try to have a generous heart and looking at the glass half full. That's the best advice. I know that's hard if you're maybe struggling with some things, because we all have those struggles, but if you can just focus and tend to that inner voice, I think it will serve you well. That leads us to, we go from soft to let's go to some hard numbers on what your army of dollar bills should be doing. So let's talk about, this is that chance when you're in your 40s, your money still has a multiple factor. I mean, I still love that it can start working for you. It's not doing what a 20-year-old can do or a 30-year-old, but it still has the opportunity for, if you figure out in your 40s you're a little behind, you have a chance to let your money do some of that heavy lifting for you. Every dollar that you invest in your 40s, now look, we've changed it once again, giving you the variables. Now you don't get 10% growth like a 20-year-old. You don't get 9% growth like a 30-year-old. You're probably going to get something like an 8%. Your diversified portfolio is going to start pulling down on these in this hypothetical situation. So if you look at a 40-year-old that's making about 8% per year, your $1 bill by the time you turn to 65, 25 years in the future, has the potential to grow by a factor of 7. You can turn 1 into $7.
That's still huge when you think about it, turning it over 7 times. So again, let's go back to sort of the examples we've been given. If you listen to the 30-year-old segment, if you were that 30-year-old that accumulated $179,000 by 40, so that's just that average accumulator of wealth, if you saved no more dollars and you just had that $179,000 working for you from age 40 out to age 65, that sum alone would be worth $1.3 million when you retire.
It's pretty incredible.
Still a millionaire.
Pretty powerful stuff. And then I also, because remember that coping mechanism, if you're in your 40s, that thing called pride doesn't move away where you're like, you see somebody in their 50s or 60s has more, and you're like, well, how do I rate compared to them? Let's talk about the juice that you have as a 40-year-old versus a 50-year-old. Your money at 40 versus a 50-year-old is 158% more powerful. Yep. And the way we got there is, remember, you have a multiply factor when you're at 40, it's 7 times. When you're 50, it only has the potential of growing at 2.8 times. So if you divide those two, you can kind of figure out how we came up with it. 40 versus a 60-year-old, your money at 40 is 444% more powerful on the potential of what it could become, thinking about those growth factors that we've already outlined.
If you have to put the foot down on the accelerator, this is the decade that you have to do it. And so now let's talk a little bit about a wealth
spot check
perspective.
this thing.
Let's do the spot check. So I think it was at 30, right? Fidelity said you want to have 1 time your salary.
Yep.
Right? 1 time your salary at 30. Does it give a number or a multiple of where we should be at 40?
At 40, I want you to go from 31 times to 40. I want you to be at 3 times your salary.
So if we look at the average income, again, so here's something that changes. We said that we had a pixie dust formula. Formula reverts back to normal formula at 40 because now it starts to make sense. You take your age, you multiply it by your income, you divide by 10. No more pixie dust, you just do this simple thing. Well, if we go back to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and we look at the average income of a 49-year-old, so at the end of this decade, average 49-year-old in America right now makes $51,272. So if we take 49 times $51,272 and divide by 10, your net worth, according to the formula, should be about $251,000. Well, Fidelity just said you should have about 3 times your income, so that'd be about $150,000.
Yeah.
We're saying you should kick it up a notch. You should probably be about $250,000 if that's where your income is.
We want you to have a good retirement.
That's
Your
right.
financial independence. We don't want you. We want you to be able to go out to dinner from time to time and do annual vacations. This seemed, when I looked at this number, I was like, I don't know, because you're going to hear their ultimate goal is to get you to 10 times. I'll bring it up again in the future. I don't know about that.
I think we can do a little bit better.
So I think you can do better than that. So I want you to kind of really do a stretch goal and try to do what we're telling you to do and try to get that income up to 15-20% is your savings goal.
So if you want to be a prodigious accumulator, instead of $251,000, you should be at about $502,000. And then if you're married, and again, every time we say we're married, we're just assuming that both spouses make the same income, right? So what you really would do is you take your household income, multiply by your age. But if you both make the same income, then you'd want to be just over $1 million to be a prodigious married accumulator.
And if you're trying to figure out, this is the thing, when we modified the formula, we didn't mention as much, but this is all tying into the research done in the Millionaire Next Door. Once you're in your 40s and 50s and 60s, you do pay attention to that Millionaire Next Door formula and the prodigious accumulator of wealth. This will tell you how successful and if you're lining up the right behaviors so that you are building that financial independence.